Goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Nuno Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes navigue, Nuno Mendes passe devant Quadrado, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, ah quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, the show where we will be having a look into the past couple of weeks of PSG as well as its entire potential future, as is our habit. It's also known as the show well positioned, like the women's team in Champions League where they beat their Swedish opposition BK Häcken last night, as I record this on Thursday afternoon. We have a busy show with a lot of stuff waiting to be discussed, a few matches played and a few more are ahead after this international break. We have an opponent now for the Champions League quarterfinals, that's Barcelona no less. So what does that mean? We get into all that with a little bit more time to reflect. You know, sometimes it's good to be quick and get the episode out there, but sometimes I think it helps to live with these things a little bit and let them breathe. See what is what feels right, what is intuitively true, and so on and so forth. My name is Mikko, great to have you with me. It's a wonderful episode, this one, I can promise you that much. And feel free to catch me and the show up online at PSG Review Pod on Twitter and at PSG Review on Instagram and TikTok. Since the last episode, there was Coupe de France quarterfinals against Nice. PSG won that match midweek last week and will be facing Stade Rennes in the semi-finals early next month in April. Essentially, that is in a few weeks or so. A quick word about the Montpellier match that was on Sunday night. Also, not getting too much into these events and actions, but rather their significance. It seems to me that a message that needed to be communicated to certain Monsieur Papé has now indeed been communicated, and no more lackluster, half-hearted, lukewarm football, which on his level is still pretty good, but not quite enough. No more nonsense while wearing the captain's armband, but now we're talking. There's a sense of urgency and intensity in his gameplay. A hat-trick was a result against Montpellier, but I'm not just talking about goals or assists, nor am I talking about the dribbles or moments of magic, because Mbappe has always had those things as part of his play. I'm talking about something that goes beyond his standards. His standards are very high, hence he creates huge numbers that make you doubt your eyesight, but there's an extra level to this, a whole nother layer that doesn't really have clear metrics for it. There are no numbers to correspond. It's that level of playing when you are in the highest level of your standards and go beyond, and you bring everyone with you. It's like a flow state, something like that, but whatever it is contagious, and you as an individual can bring the team up with you. That's what we need this spring, and we will get into the Champions League quarterfinals and what to expect a little later. But we need Mbappe at his best, and if we get it, well, you never know. You just never know what can happen. Anything is possible. I'm walking mildly back to what I have said before, just because at this point doubling down would also feel quite hostile. Not too much though, because basically I don't think that I have said that much anything that I would regret actually, because basically I have said the whole time that Kylian Mbappe, if he wants to leave, he should, because we don't need players who don't want to play for Paris. I mean, I've also said that he is the best football player in the world. These are the things that I stand behind. And I have said that he must give his all for this shirt, for this team before he goes. That he should be treated like any other player without favor, and also that he shouldn't be the captain, which has been the question in the absence of Marquinhos. Of course, Mbappe isn't the first captain, he is the second in line, but as Murphy would have it just now when it all seems to matter the most, Marquinhos has been unavailable. I don't think that Kylian Mbappe has been a bad captain, not as bad as he was. You know, since the Monaco disgrace and match before that where he was throwing the armband around, like said, I think the message has gone through, and he seems to be determined to take care of the rest of his contract, which he might as well, because he is being paid a fortune. Getting one of his monthly salaries in a lifetime would change almost anyone's reality entirely, and for good. So we should not be so blind, just because the numbers we see around and talked about are so huge. He's being well compensated, so it's not like we're asking him to do us a favor or anything like that. the kids online beg to differ. They're trying to bully me and talk about how I have this anti-Mbappe agenda, which I find quite hilarious because the only agenda that I really have in football is that I'm a fan of PSG. I support PSG players and I have supported Kylian Mbappe as such for 7 years. I have nothing against him. I admire him as a football player. I think he's really great and he has done great things for our club, but he also needs to ensure that these last months go well. And not to get all biblical about it, but when a lot is given, a lot is expected. That's just the way that it goes. But let's go back to Montpellier match. PSG had a solid start for this match. We went 2-0 ahead, then conceded 2 goals for 2-2. The second was a penalty, and I was far from the only one who felt that it wasn't quite justified. I mean, Gianluigi Donnarumma came to catch the ball in his area, and when he played the ball, he collided with Montpellier forward Koulibaly. Difficult to say what he should have done. Not play the ball seems like an unreasonable standard for a goalkeeper to not play the ball when it's in your area. But at the end of the day, the only consequence of all of that was that PSG came to the second half with even more determination after Montpellier had scored that penalty shot. A bit of a chip in the shoulder, I guess, but in a good way. In a good way, not in a way that we've had before, which ends up being either quite angry or frustrated when things fall apart, when we lose focus and start making silly mistakes, maybe taking a yellow card here and there that will lead up in a suspension later down the line, things like that. So this was something a lot better. I think it's a small kind of detail, but it's actually not a small detail. It's absolutely huge thing. That's something that can change the way that the whole season goes. Montpellier coach Michel de Zakarian, by the way, did not only disagree with me about the penalty, not only did he think that it was a deserved penalty, but also he thought that Donnarumma should have been given a straight red card. Difficult to say much more about that. Safe to say that I beg to differ. This was, for us, a match of beautiful goals. Many of them from outside the box. This was really a fun match to watch. Mbappe scored 3 goals. I mentioned that. Lee Kang in with the fine goal as well as Nuno Mendes also, who is back and on his very high level. Just like that. Enrique says that his minutes are carefully considered at the moment. He won't be thrown into the deep end quite yet. Not too many minutes, like he's being also given some rest every now and again so that he's not overdoing it while he's still very fresh from a very long-term injury. But it's really great to have him back, and it was his fellow countryman Vitinha who started the scoring also, by the way, from outside the box. Amazing shot when he scored the first goal of the match. So things are really looking very good. And certainly this match was aesthetically pleasing. Good match to watch, like I mentioned. A lot of action and well done to Montpellier also. I disagreed about the penalty call. There was another later that could have been given to them, but wasn't. Still wasn't the clearest, but clearly there was more merit there than in the initial one, so I guess it went fairly sort of even. You could look at it like that, certainly. But the take-home message right now is the mentality. Luis Enrique is doing great work with the squad and things are looking very positive. In the post-match interview on Prime in France, Luis Enrique, promised that the team will make a wholehearted attempt to win absolutely everything there is to play for. I mean, that is Ligue 1, Coupe de France and Champions League. And that's all we can ask for. But what is nice is that what happens on the pitch is corresponding with these words. It's not just empty words. We need this spirit during this spring. We now know that our Champions League quarterfinal opponent is Barcelona. The draw was on Friday last week, and here's the very first thing to say about this, and I think this is important. This is neither 2021 when we beat them. Mbappe scored a hat-trick in Camp Nou. You remember that. Moise Kean also with the goal there. And this is not the return leg in Paris for that duel, which of course was also part of round of 16. It was not quarterfinals. This is also not the match in 2017 spring at Parc des Princes. I think it was Valentine's Day when Di Maria scored 2 goals on his birthday. Cavani won also on his birthday, and Julian Draxler also got 1. When Presnel Kimpembe pocketed Messi in his first ever Champions League start and PSG won the match 4-0. One of the best Champions League matches in the last I don't know, let's say 10 years. Certainly one of the best matches that I can remember in sort of like, let's say, living memory, But it's not one of those matches either that we are going to play. It's not also the return leg that year in Barcelona when very poor and frightened PSG played a terrible match and deservedly took a beating from Barcelona, even if it was entirely up to the mismanagement of the match by the referee, Denis Ayetkin, that the beating was enough to qualify for the next round for Barcelona, where they scored 0 goals in 2 matches against Juventus. I will not accept any other explanation for this match. Like I said, PSG was terrible, but that doesn't mean that the actual end result was not decided by an absolutely horrendous, appalling refereeing. That's just history. That's, and if you disagree with me, I really encourage you to go and watch that match with the help of hindsight and with a little bit of time, and you will see what I mean, because I have done that. It was quite painful experience, but I have done it. I've gone to see that match, and you can really see that, okay, well, while PSG was awful, this was not quite on the up and up. And this is also something that Luis Enrique, by the way, was referring to, because of course he was being asked about it, that even though they went to win that match against Paris and got through to the next round, they went to the next round to do absolutely nothing against Juventus. I mean, he didn't use quite those words, but basically the message was more or less the same. But, none of that. It's neither here nor there, especially this last match. The infamous remontada will be brought up 100 times before these next 2 matches that are going to be played. You will see it resurfacing its ugly and corrupted head, but it's got nothing to do with anything. Partially why it's also such a big thing is because since that Barcelona has been struggling with their accounting and cash flow, losing their legends in unusual ways and just not being that great club that they actually are. No one in their right mind takes Barcelona lightly. It's a club with a great legacy. It has represented the Catalonia when Spain was literally a fascist country, which it was under Francisco Franco. I mean, the democratic transition only started after the mid-70s, and in the light of their actually lived history, it's better to support a club like Barcelona, in my opinion, than Real Madrid, which was far more of a lapdog of a fascist dictator. But be that as it may, and by the way, they would probably come up with some way to distance themselves from the whole thing, and maybe they're right, I don't know. But let's just say that the histories of these clubs are complicated, and in that light, where I'm looking at it, I'd much rather be on the side of Barcelona looking at it like that. But I don't really like Barcelona at all as a club. I don't care for them. But I 100% acknowledge their greatness in the history of the sport. And largely because of that is why it's also so sad to see them making a mockery of it by mishandling their finances. It is what it is. It's not my problem and it's not your problem. It's their challenge. And we all have challenges, but nothing that has ever happened with anything will win or lose these 2 matches. There's neither victory nor defeat yet. These matches are there to be played, and in due time they will be, and no goals will be scored by Ronaldinho for us or for them, not by Messi or Neymar. They are not there, neither is Zlatan. These matches are played with our current squad, and history will mean only as much as we allow it. That's my point. Life has been lived since remontada. Neymar was brought to Paris. He has already gone from us to Messi came and went. We still have Marquinhos, Kimpembe and Kurzawa from that time, and their coach, of course, now it was Luis Enrique who was Barca coach, like said that night. But check this. Even the most recent match against Barcelona in 2021, the season of empty stadia, PSG lineup was Navas in goal, backline with Kurzawa, Kimpembe, Marquinhos and Alessandro Florenzi. Remember him. Midfield with Marco Verratti, Paredes and Idrissa Gana Gueye, and attack with Mbappe, Icardi and Moise Kean. That was the starting lineup for the last time we started against, when we played against Barcelona in Camp Nou. And this team right now is unrecognizable. There's, I would say, exactly 3 players that started that match that I expect to start now for PSG, and one of them played at the time, of course, for Barcelona, and that's Ousmane Dembele. History means only as much as we make it mean. It will definitely be used against PSG. It's going to be used by the media, by the fans, by UEFA, by Champions League, by whoever else is going to be used in the lead up. But it's not a bait that we have to respond to. Quite frankly, we shouldn't. We should just leave it alone. because not one kick has been kicked off these matches and not 1 minute has been played. And this is a new time and we have to approach it as such. So I had said this online before. If we have the mentality, we will have the quality. I don't want to sound arrogant or big-headed. I certainly don't think this will be an easy match-up, and I don't think we have any way automatically qualified already. This is not the case. There is a lot left to be played, a full 2 matches, but if we have the mentality to do it, and I think Luis Enrique is doing pretty good work with this, if we have the mentality, we will have the quality to do it. There's nothing there to stop us going into the semifinals. We don't know how the injuries will come or go. We don't know if there's going to be any other circumstances, suspensions and what have you. But I will say it here and now, and I said it before also Real Sociedad matches, I expect PSG to go through. I think it has to be the goal. I'm not saying that it will happen. I'm saying that it has to be the goal, and I think that PSG has the opportunity, the good chance to do it, because if there is a mentality, there is the quality. There's nothing secure here. But if we are playing against, say, Manchester City, I would say, I wish we can beat them. I hope that we can have 2 good matches, and I hope that that's enough. But I wouldn't say that we are the favorites. I don't think that we would be favorites in that matchup, for instance. And never mind who is and who isn't the favorite, because that really doesn't win you a match either. But all I'm saying is that PSG needs to play its own game, leaning on its own strengths, forgetting that there ever was any match against these people, and all things being equal, I think we should go through. And if the team doesn't play well enough to go through, well, what can I say then? There's no point in complaining if you can't bring your best self to the table when it comes to most. So I will say that there's a chance that we won't go through, but I think that we should aim for going through. I think that there's going to be more of a disappointment if we don't, in the current state of affairs. I've had my issues with Kylian Mbappe, mainly about his behavior, of course, as a captain and largely in that Monaco match. I think that was really the bone of contention. But looking at this from his angle, let's look at it from his sort of individual angle. Last time he was the key player to send Barca packing, and doing that again would be a huge social capital for his future employer, who we assume it to be. He can also now see that there is a very realistic path to the Champions League final. Because if we win Barcelona, and we haven't won anything yet, I'm not saying that. I just want to keep that humility. Also, it might sound like I'm lacking humility, but I'm actually being very, I'm trying to be quite realistic about it and trying to communicate this in a way that I don't expect anything to happen, but I think that if we are looking at it logically and realistically, it's something that could happen. So there is a possibility that if we win against Barcelona, then we will play against either Dortmund or Atletico Madrid. Nothing is easy. These are not easy opponents. You wouldn't expect to have an easy match in the quarterfinals or semifinals of Champions League. Of course, you wouldn't, but it is possible. And Kylian Mbappe, as a competitor, as incredibly ambitious person, will look at it like, hey, I could leave Paris as a real uncontested hero. He will look at that possibility, and it's a long road. I'm not getting ahead of myself. I really keep on giving you these disclaimers about this because I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but I'm trying to get a read of what he sees in front of him. He will have to bring his best self and absolutely monstrous mentality to every one of these matches. And never mind, will he play every minute against Le Havre or somebody like that, Clermont. That's not the point. There are bigger tasks ahead, and he knows that, and maybe now he has made a little bit of a peace with that, and if he could help the club to pull off this absolutely Herculean task, then he would forever be our legend. To some he already is, of course, but far from all. Anything is possible, but nothing is guaranteed. The main point is that there's a chance, and should one get all the way to the final, which in and of itself is a huge challenge, you'd play a club that has come through its own lane, and it's not easy. On that other side, there's City, Bayern, Real, and Arsenal. The final, of course, only is one match. Anything can happen in that one match. You remember the time when Chelsea won against Manchester City just a few years ago. I don't think that people were expecting them to win, but it was just a one match, and in that one match they managed to win them. In two matches, it's usually a little bit more even than maybe the better team will go through, but one match, 90 minutes, anything can happen. We know this very well from, say, Ligue 1. Basically, it's interesting to see how it goes, but I think that we will get what we deserve, and playing well, it could be very special. The reports now are suggesting that Keylor Navas is looking to leave Paris in the summer. Well, this is hardly a huge surprise since his contract is running out and he gets to leave as a free agent. He's 37 years old now, so in football terms, not a young man, but in goalkeeper terms, not entirely over the hill either. He could still get one last deal somewhere and be a key player. Perhaps he could still have that moment that Gianluigi Buffon had with us, for instance. I mean, it's hard to believe that actually ever happened, that Buffon played for PSG, but we're not here really talking about him right now. We're talking about Keylor Navas. He came to PSG in 2019, and to me, he is one of the most significant signing of the whole QSI era. During the time when we hired and recruited players like Messi and Neymar and Mbappe and Zlatan and Cavani and all that. And I'm not taking anything away from, certainly not all of those, maybe some, but I'm not taking anything away from those. But I do think that Keylor Navas was a really, really important signing, and I think that his name should be considered in that kind of like a group of people, because while we have had many big names, and fair play to them, but the goalkeeping situation was never really sorted out before Keylor Navas. It was where we were clearly a little bit behind the other top clubs. We've had some decent keepers, but perhaps it was the pressure, perhaps it was something else. Things just never really fully clicked with them. Alphonse Areola was great at times. He was a great promise. Titi Parisien, and I was very excited about him. But eventually he left and now plays for West Ham, which of course is a decent team. But he didn't move upwards from Paris, and neither did Kevin Trapp, who had hoped to be the answer some years earlier. He has gone back to Frankfurt and even won the Europa League with them. I'm not taking anything away from him. They both had a great careers. Alphonse Areola is also a world champion, although admittedly it has to be said that he didn't really play any minutes during that tournament. But nevertheless, he is a world champion. But again, we didn't lose to either one of these players to a Champions League competitor, where Keylor Navas, he came and erased the issue, certainly from my mind. He really was the world-class keeper who came in with the CV to back it up, and his presence has helped PSG a lot. I don't think he's given enough credit, and not just by us PSG fans, but in general, in the world of football. He's a legend, and hopefully he'll get some decent contract somewhere and can enjoy football for a few more years somewhere. He deserves that. And when we come to the end of the season, we know he isn't the only player of significance who will leave this club, but he too deserves his flowers. There's absolutely no other way. PSG women played Champions League quarterfinal last night as I'm recording this on Thursday, and they were on the road in Gothenburg, or Göteborg as one would pronounce it, playing against BK Häcken. To be honest with you, this was very far from convincing match, but just about enough to win it. PSG scored 2 goals, and very sketchy penalty there was also given to the home side, which our keeper Kasia Kecinek saved, but a rebound went in. Then it's not that there was no reason to give penalty, it's just that it was a very soft one where the forward made the most out of the contact. But either way, 2-1, or I guess 1-2, because we were the visitors. And the next match will be at Parc des Princes on Thursday, 28th of March. Usually the tickets for these matches are not too expensive. They're quite affordable. So if you are in Paris next week, as I'm recording now, so Thursday, 28th of March, if you're going to be in Paris, I recommend go and watch a match. It's going to be a good match and hopefully a great atmosphere, and the team certainly deserves that. One of the things that I look least forward to in football is pretty much this international break that we are currently having. This is the one that comes, in my opinion, the worst time. Of course, we might like the national teams and we might follow them, and I'm also following them and all that, but looking at it from the angle of club football, this comes really in a bad time. This is the time of the season when we would need full focus without any extra fatigue, injuries, jet lag, but instead we get an international break. no, it is what it is, and we can hope for no injuries to our players. We hope there will be a rotation where they get some minutes, but not all of them. After the break, there's no less than Le Classique on the road at Velodrome in Marseille. Tricky return after the break, but perhaps good place to reclimatize to club football. That's next week's Sunday, not next Sunday, but Sunday of the next week. Then midweek, Coupe de France semi-final against Rennes, another demanding match there. Clermont on a weekend after, and then it's Barcelona, so there's no time to waste getting back from an international break. Absolutely none. I guess the only consolation is that everyone else is also having the same situation. It doesn't compromise us alone. It cannot be stressed enough how big couple of months we have ahead of us. Absolutely huge. It's very exciting, and there is one thing that I've been repeating today, and it's what I firmly believe in. If we have the mentality, we have the quality to do great things, so we put our trust into the hands of Luis Enrique right now. My name is Mikko, this is PSG Review. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, peace.